I'm June Gruber, an associate professor of psychology at the University of Colorado Boulder and director of this mental health expert series. I'm delighted to be here today with Dr. Diane Gooding, a professor of psychology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, about her work on risk for psychosis. So thanks for being here today, Diane.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
I was wondering if you could start just by telling us a little bit about the kind of mental health work and research you do.
Sure. I look at indicators of risk for severe and persistent mental illness, particularly schizophrenia and schizophrenia spectrum disorders. So that would be anything from schizotypal personality disorder, paranoid personality disorder, those personality disorders that are genetically related to schizophrenia, as well as things like schizoaffective disorder, schizophreniform disorder, and of course schizophrenia. And then sometimes we get, and I also look at, things that are not genetically at this point related to schizophrenia, but we're also interested in it because it's a psychotic outcome, like bipolar disorder or cocaine-induced psychosis or other things I've looked at.
So, how did you get started doing this really fascinating and important work?
You know, even after all these years, and I've been in the field about 30 years now, I still do find it really fascinating. And it started in a really interesting way. Back when I was in college, we called it physiological psych. Now it would be called neuroscience. And I needed to do an extra credit project. And so I started reading about people with schizophrenia, and their eye movements were different. In fact, they had difficulty smoothly following a slowly moving spot of light with their eyes only. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. And so I did my paper on that. And a professor took interest in me, my physiological psych professor, and he said, this is an excellent paper. The guy that you kept citing is here, and I would like you to consider doing an honors thesis with him. And I just was so touched that someone took an interest in me, and I went to talk to this guy, and it was Dr. Philip Holtzman, and he had never had an undergraduate thesis advisee before, unbeknownst to me. He was so encouraging, and it really, I don't want to sound over dramatic, but it changed my life. It was a great experience. I was in a lab with very serious researchers. They took me seriously. I got to sit in on diagnostic case meetings, and I interacted with people with severe illnesses. I did my undergraduate thesis on the effects of smooth pursuit eye tracking before and after tricyclic antidepressants. And it was fascinating, and I discovered that I loved research. And that was it.
That's amazing. So, from that point of having just this paper that changed your life and a mentor too who guided you to where you are now, what have you noticed as some like kind of frustrations along the way, but also, successes you've been able to savor?
Well, I think my experience is linked to what I consider my greatest successes. And for me, I could talk about um, the research awards and the teaching awards and all that stuff because that's success too. And that's how a lot of people measure success. But for me, how I measure my greatest success is in the students that I've mentored because I was the beneficiary of great mentoring throughout my career, from being an undergraduate to being a graduate student and beyond. And I've really been grateful. And I, in turn, really love being a mentor. And I love watching my students go forward, even students that I've had, if only for summer. So one of my favorite stories is a student that I had in a summer research opportunity program. And he had approached me at actually an SRP meeting, and I'm so proud of him because we stayed in touch. He was brilliant. We ended up writing a paper together. He's a first author. He is now a clinical psychologist, a researcher in his own right. I could not be prouder of him. He's one of my successes. And I have several students like that. And now I am senior enough that several of them are, assistant professors. One just got tenured. Those are my successes. Are there clinicians in the field making a difference? Those, and one's a wonderful social worker who's just, doing wonderful work with people with schizophrenia. So those are, to me, the greatest successes.
That's beautiful and so true, right? That what we can do to guide others in this field as
Because
things.
that's the future.
Yeah, it's the future. And I mean, when you think about the future, a question I had for you related to this is like, what do you see as the most important next steps?
Well, I'm really excited because I actually developed a measure and it's taken off. And so that is one way in which I feel like that is the next step. I mean, it's the anticipatory and consummatory interpersonal pleasure scale, and it has really taken off. I worked on it with my lab because nothing's ever done just solo. We're all in this collaborative research process together. And now it's been translated, it's being used internationally all over. And so the future is to see it, and it's gone places that I didn't expect it to go. So I developed it because social anhedonia is a risk factor in schizophrenia, but people are using it in the depression world, in the autism world, and beyond. And so now the future is to, especially when people are using other ways of classifying psychopathology, right? And they're saying, well, let's not just look at it using these classification systems. Let's look at different systems. Let's look at the negative valence system, the positive valence system. Let's look at disruptions and how they interact across different illnesses, and how can we put all of these things together? How can we use our science to ameliorate the lives of people with mental illness? This is not just an academic exercise.
I think that couldn't be better put, right? This is about people's wellness and their ability to thrive and overcome suffering.
Yeah, that's why presumably we're in this. And
Yeah.
so that's what drives me. And that is the future. And we need to be innovative when we do our science. And we need to remember that this is what we're doing. We're creating science.
So, what advice would you have for people watching this interview? Maybe it's students, right? Future scientists or mental health professionals, the public, those who may just be interested in learning more, getting involved in the field.
Ask the questions and don't be afraid to follow where the questions lead you. Some of my favorite papers, I did not get the results that I had been anticipating. But to me, that's what research is all about. It's a mystery. I love mysteries. And research is just like that. Get involved, be open, know your history, though. Be sure to cite the people that came before you. It's a sign of respect, you know. The field has some accepted paradigms, but think outside the box. It's important to be creative, know what's been done before, but then look beyond that because that's the way we're going to keep moving the field forward. So that would be my advice to students. My advice to the public is to trust researchers a bit, read the informed consent, but then please get engaged because that's how we move the field. We need people to participate. People with lived experience, with the illnesses, their relatives, as well as people who have been fortunate to not have the lived experience of the illness. But we need everyone to get involved because we can't do it alone.
Thank you so much, Diane, for speaking today. This was just so inspirational and such wise kind of kernels of wisdom and advice. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.